Good morning. This is Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, joined by my co-host Gavin Schoenwald, and right off the top today, Neal McCready, who covers Ole Miss at RebelGrove.com, has covered Ole Miss for 16, 17 years now, Neal? It's been a minute.
Yeah, I've stopped counting.
It's probably good at our age. But in any case, you have covered the speed a long time. And this is a big one for Ole Miss. This could be a little bit of a program-defining game, it seems to me, with Alabama coming up this Saturday. Is that overstating it?
No, I think that's right. I think it's a huge win if they win it. I think it's a huge loss if they lose it. I do. I think this is a big opportunity. There's no spinning it. There's no attempt to. There should be no attempt to run from it. This is as vulnerable as Alabama's been in a long time. There's no way around that. There's no Bryce Young. There's no no elite offensive tackles. They don't have that monstrous defensive front that they've had in the past. It's still very good, but it's not what it's been in the past. They don't have those elite receivers on the outside that just scare the hell out of everybody, that can beat you routinely. And they have good backs, but they don't have the great back that they've had in the past. This is a game that Ole Miss should have a chance to win. And if they do, they get LSU next week here, and you have an opportunity at that point to take that step that Lane Kiffin always talks about taking. It's going to come across as a shot at Lane. I don't mean for it to at all. It's interesting to watch sort of things progress, right? There was this moment in 2020 in the COVID year, and forget the game, but they played Alabama here. It was an Alabama loaded team. They won the national championship. They were just stacked. Gavin, you probably remember those guys. I mean, they were unbelievable.
Yep.
And Ole Miss went toe-to-toe with them. I mean, went toe-to-toe through a boxing match, man. The first 12, 13 rounds was just a Donnybrook. I mean, just go exchanging scores. And finally, Alabama beat them a couple scores, but it was some kind of game. And as they left the field, the fans, the socially distanced fans, the ones who were brave enough to risk catching COVID in that outdoor air, because, I mean, hopefully they were double masked. But anyway, they gave them a standing ovation. And Lane Kiffin didn't like that. And after the game, there's the speech that he gives to the team. He's like, hey, we didn't come here for moral victories. We didn't come here to cover the spread. We came here to win. We came here to win these games. Cool. And that fired everybody up. I was like, hell yeah, rock on. And so here we are. It's not about, hey, can we go at 9-3? No, I mean, that's not what you said. You said this is about winning championships, and to win a championship, to get to Atlanta for the first time in program history, this is a game you must win. And if you win it, the stakes next week get even bigger. But if you lose it, here's a reality. If you lose it, you go, you know what? Maybe we can't beat them. Maybe we just can't do it. It'd be 0-4 against Bama in the Kiffin era. And then LSU comes in, and they're pretty good. And you drop one to them, and then all of a sudden it's, well, what are we even playing for now? And then Arkansas comes in, and Arkansas just got beat by BYU. I get it. And I don't think they're particularly good, but that has not been a great matchup for Lane Kiffin. He's 1-2 against Arkansas since he's been here, and is a 2-point conversion away from being 0-3. So I think this is a monumentally big moment for Ole Miss on Saturday afternoon. Just huge.
No, I can't agree with you enough, Neal. I think also too, you said it. If there's ever a year to do it, the year is now. And there's no elite quarterback. They've gone from Tua, Hurts, Mac Jones to Bryce Young. The unbelievable talent they've had there. They've had 5 guys across the board get picked in the first round, receiver-wise, elite tackles, elite guards, and then monstrous defensive linemen who usually go in the top 5 of the NFL draft. To be honest with you, I don't know if any of them are there now. Any of those that I've spoke about. We've talked a lot, Chris and I on this show have talked about teams taking the next step, and teams that we've kind of identified as that are Arkansas, but also Ole Miss. They've been good. I think Ole Miss maybe scratched maybe top 10, top 12 last year.
Yeah.
But can they truly take the next step of becoming an elite program in the SEC, which at the end of the day is going to Atlanta. And you said it yourself; they've never been in program history. I can't agree with you enough, my man. This is a monumental game, and if there's ever a year to do it, it's now. And there's no one else out there. I know there was a conversation a lot for a long time about, Kiffin's assistants trying to beat him, and until one finally did, I don't know if there's a former assistant out there that wants to beat him more than Lane Kiffin does, especially that now it's Brian Denny.
Yeah, look at the social media this week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, Lane Kiffin, he likes Taylor Swift. There's no question about that. I like Taylor Swift. A lot of people like Taylor Swift. I've got teenage girls. Taylor Swift's big. Lane's got a teenage girl. I'm sure he's heard a lot of Taylor Swift blasting through the house. I don't doubt for a minute that he likes Taylor Swift. But on Monday morning, when he tweets a Taylor Swift song called Castles Crumbling, like a hell of a tune. I just don't think that, I don't think that's Lane going, you know what, here we are on Monday. I think I'm going to, take my shot at T Swift here. No, I don't think so. I think that was Lane sending a message that the castle's crumbling, and he's referring to Tuscaloosa. And okay, prove it. Because look, from Alabama's standpoint, you can walk away from the Texas loss and go, it's all right. Texas is really good. Whatever. Not an SEC loss. We still got everything still control our own destiny. True fact. Then you go to USF and you look terrible, and you do the quarterback roulette thing, and that was a disaster. And had USF been decent, that would have been weird. But they survived it. And now it's Ole Miss. And if they beat Ole Miss, they can kind of go, hey, got another week, got to start being the little engine that could, right? You get a little momentum, and before you know it, they're back to being Bama. But you lose to Ole Miss at home, it's over. You're not going to Atlanta. I know it's one loss, but I'm just telling you, the loser of this game's not going to Atlanta. So it's just a big moment. He gets a chance to really back up his words and his actions, and he's played some mind games with them. The one thing it's told me, and you guys are free to tell me I'm an idiot, it tells me that Lane Kiffin believes he's winning this game.
Well, you've hit on where I was going to go next. And Gavin, you may need to cover your ears here. Well, I remember once upon a time, Vanderbilt had beaten Kansas State and was about to play Alabama next. Nephi Liallo makes the Alabama your next comment. And boy, there was blood on the field the next Saturday. And look, I think that Alabama team is better than this team. I don't think it's close, but my question is, why do you poke the bear there? I don't know what this could possibly do to benefit. I could see that hurting them in a million ways. I don't know how this benefits Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss to do what he did this week.
He likes attention. He likes the spotlight. He wants the spotlight. He needs the spotlight, maybe. He wants his program to be talked about as an equal with Alabama. He wants on Saturday morning, when Herb Street and all of those guys are doing hour after hour of programming from wherever they're going to be on Saturday, he wants them talking about Ole Miss and not Alabama. I think he likes to use this as recruiting fodder. But guys, at the end of the day, you got to win the game. And if he wins the game, you can talk all you want. You can Twitter all you want. But if they lose the game, I know what song, if I were running the Alabama social media account, I know what, if I'm running the stadium operations at Alabama, I know what's playing in the fourth quarter. I mean, there's a handful of songs that you could do. I don't know how that works with Taylor Swift and her royalties, but Bryant Denny's becoming a Taylor Swift concert if it's me and that doesn't go Ole Miss's way in the fourth quarter, and you probably are playing Castles Crumbling a little bit just to have a little fun. And he set that up, and maybe he's cool with that. But here's the other part of this that I'm super interested in, and both of you guys, I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. It's one way or the other, right? Gavin, you know this. You played college football. I didn't, and I don't think Chris, I don't think you did either. We both probably should have. We just didn't get our opportunities. Gavin played. You know, when a game's over, you got to move on.
Oh yeah,
you got LSU the next week. So win or lose, 6:15, 6:30 on Saturday, you're T-minus 1 week until LSU is in Vaught-Hemingway, and you've got to turn the page. And that has been a knock on Kiffin at Ole Miss. There aren't many knocks on him. He's had a hell of a run. But the knock on him maybe is this Alabama game means so much that when it's over, it's hard to throw it in the trash can and move on to the next and get ready. And Jaden Daniels and company, they'll show up in Oxford, and you got to get your focus to LSU in a hurry, one way or the other.
Dan, no doubt. And, summarizing under our umbrella here, this is Lane Kiffin's favorite week of the year. It's his favorite week of the year. And as we know, he's the king of trolling, and the reason everyone loves him or the reason everyone hates him, this week it's going to be even more magnified than ever. Maybe ever in any type of Ole Miss Alabama matchup we've seen. Because, I think in the previous matchups, I think there's something in the back of our mind that said, oh, maybe Ole Miss can win it. This is a year, I don't want to say the word should, because I think Alabama is still favored and maybe should be at home. But if there's ever a year, it's this year. It's this year to beat them. And so I'm with you, man. Like, Ole Miss goes in there and beats them, it'll be probably the biggest win of Lane Kiffin's career, at least to him personally. Maybe not, maybe on his resume or maybe not to others, whatever it may be. But to him personally, it's going to mean the most. But you hit it on the head, Neal. They got to turn around and play LSU at home in a week. And as a player, those big win hangovers are unbelievably real. Let's look at last week. Texas goes into Alabama, gets a monumental win for Sark and crew. And it was 10-10 versus Wyoming, I think, in the middle of the third or the end of the third at home. And they were like 28, 30-point favorites. Those big win hangovers are real. And so, look, I know we're talking about the game this weekend, but they got just as big, if not a bigger one, the next week at home against LSU, especially if they find a way to win this one. So I think that's where we really see, Kiffin maturing as a coach and his whole journey through Tennessee and SC, and his short stint in the NFL and whatever it may be. If they can win this game, unbelievable win for the program, for Kiffin. But what are they going to look like when they walk into their home stadium against LSU? Because you best believe that place will be packed, especially after they beat Bama this week, assuming that that's what they're going to end up doing. So we'll see. I'm really pumped to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm interested too. It's a monumental. I mean, they get LSU at 5:00 on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, that's kind of like the perfect hour for Ole Miss to play a game like that in the last day of September. And people have had all day in the Grove, but they haven't had too long in the Grove. And Vaught-Hemingway would be rocking. And if they're 4-0, they probably are either in the top 10 or on the verge of the top 10. And more importantly, if you beat Alabama and you beat LSU, if you're from an Ole Miss perspective, now that trip to Georgia in November it's a free shot, right? You could still lose that game and still win the West. So I don't know how many ways we can say it. It's really, really big.
Neal, what do we know about Ole Miss? I think,
Not much.
Nobody's exactly played Murderer's Row so far, but Ole Miss and Tulane and Georgia Tech have played two teams better than a lot of SEC teams have played, for sure. I know that the defense is leaked at times, I guess, a little bit. Maybe the Georgia Tech game was a little closer than the score indicated. Just listening to some scuttlebutt around that game, but man, their offense has been phenomenal. And here's the thing: they've had guys hurt. They've had key guys hurt. They've got a running back who's their best player unquestionably coming into the season that's not been himself. I mean, to me, I don't know exactly what we got with Ole Miss here, but if I'm in another locker room, I'm a little freaked out because Ole Miss has been winning by some pretty decent margins, and they're nowhere near optimal health, productivity, whatever.
Yeah, you asked what we know about them. Not a lot. They beat up on Mercer, but okay. They went down to Tulane, and it's a good win. I'm not minimizing the win, but Tulane was without Michael Pratt, the quarterback. That would have been dicey, I think, had Pratt been on the field, because Tulane had some success offensively against that defense. But to Ole Miss's credit, in the fourth quarter, they made the plays they needed to make, pulled away, got the win. Last week against Georgia Tech, by the way, speaking of shade, the Lane Kiffin shade at Jimbo Fisher talking about Haynes King, the Georgia Tech quarterback, was wow. He's a completely different player now. They've done a great job coaching him. He's like a totally different quarterback. It's like, good God, just Okay. Georgia Tech was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and Georgia Tech had 477 yards of offense. And, to Ole Miss's credit again, in the fourth quarter, they dominated. They blew it out, ended up winning by 25 points. But what do we know? Not a lot. We know this. Jackson Dart's been terrific at quarterback. He's had an absolutely magnificent start to his season. He's thrown one interception, and that was on a play where the receiver fell. He's protected the football. He's made good decisions. He's run effectively when they've needed him to run. He's been a leader. And as you mentioned, Chris, and you're right, he's been without a handful of his top offensive targets. Trey Harris has 5 touchdown passes already this season, but he's only played 5 quarters. He missed most of the Tulane game. He missed all of the Georgia Tech game. They're hoping he's back this weekend. Zachary Franklin, who they got out of the portal, has yet to take a snap. I think this is his week to make a debut. He put up big numbers at UTSA. I don't know what we'll see what he does at Ole Miss. And then they were super excited about Caden Prieskorn, the Memphis tight end transfer that was very, very good in the spring and looked really good in the first part of preseason camp. And then he suffered a foot injury. I think he's going to make his debut in an Ole Miss uniform on Saturday. So they'll get some of those guys back. I think Judkins is on the mend. I think there is concern about why they've been unable to kind of get him going. Is it because of him? Is it because of the offensive line? Is it because of some combination thereof? Is it because defenses are really keying on him, taking away that A gap, that kind of thing? It's probably a combination of all of that. But hey, we'll know a whole lot more on Saturday. I've been saying this for months. Like, people are like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Ask me at 6:00 on September the 23rd. You could see this was going to be a CBS game. You knew it was going to be one. Here it is. Ask me at 6:30. Hey, what do we know about Ole Miss? And I'll have a much more detailed answer than what I have right now.
Neal, I want to ask you. You talked about Jackson Dart, and we played him last year as well, and I think we were leading 20-10 at halftime. Didn't have a great first half against us at Vanderbilt, and then came and lit it up in the second. And so I think last year he had some inconsistencies in his game within like one whole football game. He'd play well for one quarter, maybe not for the next. He's been pretty outstanding this year, to say the least. What can you attest that to? We've spoken a lot here on this podcast about when Kiffin brought in Spencer Sanders and how that was a little bit of a question mark. He set every record in the book from Oklahoma State. Was that a strategic move to push Dart a little bit and make him get a little bit better? Or what have you really seen the difference in Dart this year compared to last year?
Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever really completely get a full understanding on the whole Spencer Sanders thing. And then you watch Oklahoma State, who desperately needs a quarterback, and you watch Spencer Sanders sit on the bench at Ole Miss, and you're like, you guys couldn't work this out? I mean, that's feels like you probably should have given the relationship another run. You're both sitting around on Tinder all miserable right now, and you could have just stayed where you were. Everybody, you split up the house and everything else, and what for? Anyway, I asked Jackson about that. We had a long conversation about it last month, and he told me that there were just times last year that the adjustment to a new offense, to a new scheme, he'd never really run the RPO stuff. He said, there were just times when, from a decision-making process, it wasn't black or white to him, it was gray. And he's like, gray's not good. You need to know where you're going with the ball. And he said there were some times where I thought I knew where to go with the ball, but I wasn't sure. And when you're not sure as a quarterback, you get a little tentative. And when you get a little tentative as a quarterback, you play a little slower and you make mistakes. And that's what happened. And he wasn't super comfortable. He was brand new to Mississippi. He's a Utah kid who'd been at USC. He didn't want to leave USC. He had no choice when Lincoln Riley brought in Caleb Williams. He was going to be sitting. So he left, but he left a place where he was happy, where he had friends there. There was an adjustment to a new part of the country, a new school, a new coaching staff, everything. And, he was 19 years old. That's the other thing that people kept forgetting, is he's a young guy. I mean, he was 19 years old as Ole Miss's quarterback. So I just think it's a maturity. He's more comfortable now. I think he's much more confident in his decision-making. And, I just think that shows. I don't know whether Kiffin was trying to push him by bringing in Spencer Sanders, or whether Kiffin brought in Spencer Sanders to be his quarterback, and Jackson Dart said, hey, I still have a say in this. But the one thing that was very evident late in the spring into the summer was that's Jackson Dart's locker room. The guys respect him. They like him. They enjoy playing with him. They believe in him. And you've seen that on the field this year. He's tough as nails. I mean, you can question a lot of things about Jackson, but you can't question his toughness. He if anything, he's too tough. He still has to, he'll tell you this. He's got to get better about, hey, look, live to fight another day sometimes. I mean, sometimes he'll drop that shoulder and take on a linebacker or a safety, and you're like, dude, that those 2 yards are not worth it if you miss the next 7 weeks. So he's got to do that. But that's a maturity thing. That's a quarterback growing up thing. But if you're talking about a guy, heart and all of that stuff, he's got it in spades, and it has shown this year.
Yeah, I think the quarterback storylines in this game are phenomenal. You know, the Dart and how well does he do? Because, I mean, he's putting up Heisman-like numbers so far. Long way to go between here and there, but, you know, he does it in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. His name's going to be on some betting boards somewhere if it's not already. But on the other side, you got Jalen Milroe, and I don't – Neal, is Saban officially named him the starter for this week? Okay, so it's official. I'd heard that it would be. So – you've got that, and the last time we saw Milroe, it was the Texas game. We know how that went. I still remember him against Arkansas last year, where he just made some dazzling plays with his feet. I mean, if I'm Alabama, that's got to be part of their identity. And then this Ole Miss defense, we just don't know about. What do you expect that to look like in that matchup of Jalen Milroe against Ole Miss's defense this week?
I think Alabama has to give him some design runs. They've got to try to establish the running game. Then they've got to use him as an extra runner. That's going to bring DBs up because that's just how it works. And the one thing that he's done well this year as a thrower is he's been pretty bad in the intermediate. He's been really good with the deep ball. His deep ball stats are like off the charts. He's like 8 for 11 on deep balls. I mean, he's been elite as a deep ball passer, which is something that he did not do in a very small sample size a year ago. I think that's their path, right? Because here's the interesting thing. We all focus because we're in the media, and this is just what we do. We get the shiny toy and we chase after it, and the quarterback's always a shiny toy. Alabama's offensive line has not played well. They're like one of the worst in the league in terms of sacks allowed. And Ole Miss is the one thing defensively they've been able to kind of consistently do so far this season. Because the knock on them is that they're kind of slow defensively. But they've been able to get to the quarterback. They've created some havoc in the backfield. Can Alabama protect him in passing downs if they get into passing downs? Obviously, Pete Golding, the former Alabama defensive coordinator, is at Ole Miss now. He knows Milroe. He's practiced against him countless times. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. He knows what Alabama's going to try to do. You got that element of it. Can they protect him? And then from an Ole Miss standpoint, defensively, it's can you contain him? Because if he starts running loose and you're having to spend a lot of energy worrying about a running quarterback, all of a sudden someone gets behind you in big play, a couple of big plays, and Bryant Denny's rocking and you're chasing points, and that takes you out of what you want to do offensively, and it makes your health at wide receiver an even bigger issue. And so, it's pretty fascinating. You're right, though. I mean, Milroe and how they use him and how effective he is. I mean, I guess it's a duh thing. If the quarterback doesn't play well, it's going to be hard. But how he plays coming off of getting benched or suspended or whatever it was last week is certainly going to be interesting. But what's interesting to me about Alabama is it's pretty clear that the players on that team want Jalen Milroe to be the quarterback.
Agreed.
And so, they're going to play for him too. Everybody does the Saban thing and the Kiffin thing, and I get it, right? But look, Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin aren't playing this game. Once it kicks off, all the Twitter stuff and Taylor Swift and all that stuff, nobody's thinking about that. You're out making plays. You're out executing. You're trying to do your job. This is going to come down to players, and Milroe's obviously going to play a huge role in the outcome of this game.
And that's it right there. Milroe gives Bama the best chance to win. I'm not really sure what happened last week with the Buckner experience and the carousel. Long story short, it was disaster. Milroe's not a bad player. He's just not the elite guy that Bama's had for the past 5 years. And so what can Saban and crew do to give themselves the best chance to win? I think it's what you said, Neal. It's use him as an extra runner, bring in the safeties up. And we've seen it. We saw it versus Texas. We've seen it in other games as well. He can throw it over the top. If you can get guys and safeties kind of creeping into the box, just trying to play the run, now that you have an extra guy to account for in the run game, you do a little play action. Those guys are biting down 6-5 yards. Throw that thing over the top. He can do that. And so, but you got to change the scheme. It's not Bryce Young. It's not Mac Jones where you're methodically going to throw a dig, a corner for 12, 14, methodically go down the field. That's not Jalen Milroe's game. His game.
That's what's interesting to me, Gavin, is that you would have thought that they would have figured this out a long time ago. I mean, Bryce has been gone for a minute.
Yeah.
You would have thought that hey, we don't have Bryce Young on this team anymore. We didn't get Sam Hartman. This is what we have at quarterback, so we need to adjust what we're doing. If they're just now getting to a place where, okay, let's adjust and kind of change the scheme, you would know better than me. I mean, you've been in a lot more college football practice as a player than I have, but I mean, I don't know how much you can really change the scheme in 3 days. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, you're kind of limited. I mean, there's a time limit and you got stuff going on, and I don't know how much you can completely change your identity offensively in 3 days. And it looked like with Buckner and Simpson, they were trying to run the old system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think, you're right. It's too late to overthrow your system and try to implant a new one. But what you can do is give Milroe a shorter menu of plays. And so, for example, we experienced this last year at Vanderbilt. We started the season with Mike Wright, who's a Milroe-esque player, really, really dangerous on it with his legs, can outrun anybody really in this conference, which is rare at that position. But struggle to push the ball downfield. And then we transitioned to AJ Swan, where kind of the strengths were flipped, to be honest with you. And so, as a team, especially as an offensive player, it's tough because the offense goes as the quarterback goes. But Milroe's done it, and Chris, you said it, man. He can create that big play. Alabama's not going to go on a 14-play, 75-yard drive. Their touchdowns this weekend are going to be big plays, chunk plays of 15-plus yards, and that's what they're just going to need to bank on. It's not what Bama's been in the past. I'm not sure if it's what they want to be, but that's what gives them the best chance to win this game. But we've talked a bunch about quarterbacks. Neal, I want to ask you about the defenses here. Obviously, we've all seen the comments about what Lane Kiffin said about, questions of maybe who's really calling the plays defensively for Alabama. Is it Kevin Steele? I saw Nick Saban came out and defended it that it was Kevin Steele. They may have tweaked a thing or two in terms of signals of how that go in. What's the latest on what you're hearing on your end about Kiffin's approach and maybe the reasoning behind his comments?
Oh, I think the reason behind his comment was to send a message to Saban that, hey, you've got dissension in the ranks, that we got this information from your building. We know people on in your building, and that's what they told us, which had to be infuriating to Saban to get that. I've talked to some people in Alabama who believe that there's some validity to what Kiffin said, even though Saban has come out and denied it, that they think, hey, he's not the first person to say it. There was a time, I think it was, I can't remember the coach's name. It was he was an older coach. He was the defensive coordinator when they just brought in Pete Golding as co-defensive coordinator, and it was Golding who was calling the plays, even though they said somebody else was. Just trying to create any little edge, anything to get in their heads, and on that count, that may have been effective because he made Saban address it. And so, Saban hasn't addressed the castle crumbling thing to my knowledge, but he had to address the defensive coordinator. So maybe that worked, but I think it's Lane playing mind games. But you talk about their defense, it's going to come down to, how they handle Ole Miss's tempo. Can they throw some looks at Dart that confuse him, where you get Dart to make a mistake, and when he finally makes a mistake, does he get rattled or does he move on? Last year when he made a mistake, he got rattled a little bit. This year he hasn't done it yet, so I'm sure they want to force that. And look, they want to take Judkins out of the game. They want to get Ole Miss into 3rd and long and all of those things. And for Ole Miss, the question will be, there's a young linebacker on their team, Perkins, Suntaran Perkins, a 5-star recruit that everybody wanted. Alabama wanted him badly. Real athletic kid, raw, green, all that stuff, but he can really play, and his play call amounts have been going up from 20 something against Tulane, almost 40 snaps against Georgia Tech. Maybe they put him in as the spy on Milroe. Maybe they completely throw a look at Alabama that Alabama doesn't expect or hadn't seen on film. But those are some of the things to kind of watch for. And then, like I said, it's Alabama's offensive front against Ole Miss's defensive front, and these games are always kind of decided in the trenches, and this one probably will be too.
My dog has chimed in the chat there, but you really cover Mr. Toad's wild ride, don't you, Neal?
Yeah. It's an interesting look. I think it's kind of fun. He's different than what he comes across on social media. He doesn't deal with local media. He gives scoops to national media. He talks openly with national media. Like the Los Angeles Times was in and had this big long story. It was really well done. McCullough, I think, was the writer. It was terrific. It was incredibly good journalism. But you realize that, dude had some serious access, like inside meetings and stuff. And we never even have a conversation with the guy. Like, everything is behind the podium and all that stuff with us. But it's pretty interesting if as a journalist you can adapt and be creative. It's kind of fun because he's interesting. I mean, like this week, again, you wake up on Monday morning. I'd gone out for my run. I run every morning around 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'd finished my run and I'm just kind of walking, doing my cool down, and I open up Twitter and there it is. I mean, castle's crumbling. Like, well, this is going to be an easy podcast today. And, he'd get a lot of those gifts. I mean, he's the gift that keeps on giving.
All right. One or two more before we get you out of here. Look, if Ole Miss beats Alabama, that changes a lot of things, I think. But right now, as we're sitting here doing this on, Wednesday, I feel like we've got at the top, we got Georgia and LSU in the SEC. Maybe we've got Ole Miss. Maybe we've got Texas A&M. And then God only knows what. Is that kind of the way you see it at this point?
I think okay.
And Alabama too, obviously. Like if Alabama were to go and wax Ole Miss, then that maybe answers some questions that we've prematurely buried them. But this is just hard for me to figure as much as it's ever been, Neal.
This is going to sound crazy, but I think the team in the SEC that has the highest ceiling is LSU. That doesn't mean that they'll get there. The West is harder than the East this year. Like I watched Georgia and I'm like, man, what are you guys doing offensively? You're like back in the 80s or something. I mean, they look so pedestrian on offense that there were moments in that South Carolina game that even though they were significantly more talented than South Carolina, you're like, dude, South Carolina might win. I mean, this is interesting, right? I mean, Rattler's a good quarterback. He's not great, but he's good. And they were making plays and they were doing some things and they scared them. And I thought, this is crazy. But at some point, you have to acknowledge that Georgia is a one-dimensional team. They're an elite defensive team, which is going to give them a shot in every game. Yep. But they're pedestrian enough on offense to be vulnerable on a off night. Is there anybody on their schedule that can beat them? I thought going into the season maybe it was Tennessee. I don't really think that anymore. They don't wow me at this point. Maybe it's Ole Miss at the end, but we're a long way from that. Like I'm not ready to go there yet. But I look at LSU and I just see explosive. They have a very good quarterback. They've got elite receivers, got a weapon or two in the backfield. They're pretty good up front. They've got some dudes on defense that can just change games by themselves. And in this league, I mean, you get 3 or 4 dudes on defense and that can be game changing. And after that, I mean, look, Texas A&M's pretty interesting because we all offseason we did this thing about, Petrino and Fisher, can they coexist and whatever. Well, yeah, they're pretty good on offense, but guys, they're horrible on defense so far. And so, what happens with them over the next couple of weeks? What do they do against Arkansas? Arkansas just lost to BYU, but defensively, Arkansas stats weren't that terrible. I mean, Arkansas just played this weird offensive line game that got them killed. And they get Sanders back here pretty soon. Maybe Arkansas can knock off A&M, and then we're having a completely different conversation about all of it. But after that, it's this hodgepodge of teams like Kentucky and Carolina and Missouri and sort of everybody, really. I mean, where it's just, I don't know what they are. I mean, it's still a little early. Mississippi State did not look good against LSU at all. They have to hope that I'm right and that LSU's a rolling ball of butcher knives, because otherwise State's in trouble. Vanderbilt's obviously off to a really bad start. I haven't liked what I've seen from Auburn so far, but I covered Hugh Freeze for years, and he's really good at the emotional part of it, and maybe they pull off an upset here soon. But the rest of the league, and this, in my opinion, includes Alabama, it includes Ole Miss, it's a bunch of unknowns.
Gavin, I'll give you the last one so we can get Neal out of here and let him get on to what I know is a busy day here.
Yeah. Well, Neal, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it. And conversation's easy flowing with you. I appreciate your time here, man. But no, I think if let's talk Ole Miss first, and then I'll wrap it up with SEC. If I'm an Ole Miss fan, if I'm an Ole Miss player, if I'm an Ole Miss coach heading in this weekend, I'm heading in with the utmost confidence. I'm playing well. I'm undefeated. My quarterback's playing at the highest level. And we got a guy in our backfield as well who hasn't nearly hit what we all know he can play. And that breakout game is coming. And when it does, and Dart's playing well too, that offense is going to be really, really hard to stop. Alabama's as vulnerable as they've been ever now. Is this the year they finally do it? Let's talk about the conference and what you said. I'm with you, Neal. I think LSU is still the team to beat. They were primetime, first week game against Florida State and got embarrassed, out physicaled, out dominated. I haven't seen that happen in a long, long time to a Louisiana State team. But what they did this past week is the exact opposite of what happened in the first week, because they dominated Mississippi State. Now, look, I'm not saying Mississippi State is a top 25 team or whatever it may be, but they looked outstanding. And most importantly, Jaden Daniels looked outstanding. And that team's going to go as he goes. And after that, man, league's wide open. I mean, it is wide ass open. And so I have no clue. If you ask me to say who's going to be Atlanta at the end of the year, right now on a Wednesday in September, it's kind of a toss-up for me. I mean, I think it could be four, 5, 6 different teams if we're being honest. I mean, it's wide open, and that's why we play the season. That's why we play the games, and I'm really looking forward to these big games, and it starts this weekend in Tuscaloosa. But Neal, I really appreciate you joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate both of you for having me. Hope you have a great weekend.
Neal, want to give you just a second to promo your stuff. Obviously, you've run RebelGrove for a while. You're the best in Ole Miss coverage, but you've got a podcast with Tyler Siskey. That's a name that Ole Miss and Alabama fans know that is truly appointment listening, and I mean that. I don't miss one. It is different than anything that you will hear anywhere, because of Tyler's connections, but also because of Tyler.
Yeah.
If anybody's listened, they know what I mean. But I think it's incredible. I wanted you to give a minute to tell folks about it.
Yeah, it's McCready and Siskey. It's on Disrupt Media. If you go to Disrupt Media, please hit the subscribe button on their YouTube, on wherever you get podcast, McCready and Siskey. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday live at 2:00 p.m. Central Time. And we pretty much cover the whole league, and God only knows what else. And yeah, you never really know what you're in for with Tyler. We get Jeff Collins, the former Temple and Georgia Tech head coach, joins us every Monday. Kane Womack, the head coach at South Alabama, who's a good friend of both of ours, joins us every Thursday. We've had Matt Luke on pretty recently. We've had some other guys on too. So it's usually a pretty fun show, and we try to keep it informative as well, although sometimes the information part goes off the rails. But it's always pretty entertaining. So yeah, they would love it if you'd give it a shot.
Do we get the Joker this week?
I would think that the Joker is probably making an appearance on Thursday. I don't know that for sure, but I would think the Joker, the Joker, at least in Tyler's mind, is not a Colorado football fan. So I suspect that given the impending trip to Eugene, that the Joker will have something to say.
Oh, I think he will too. Well, you guys do a phenomenal job. Again, it is a show unlike anything I've ever heard, and I think if you're watching us, you'd love that too. But Neal, thank you for joining us. I know this is a busy time. I don't know how you sleep, if you sleep, but we appreciate you making time for us today.
Thanks, Chris, Gavin. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah, all right. That's Neal McCready. at Rebel Grove. Good friend of mine, one of the best guys I know in the sports journalism business, not just from a character standpoint, but just from a professional standpoint. Man, Gavin, I can't wait. We are finally here to the point where the games are really going to start to matter. We're getting SEC on SEC. Next weekend, we get nothing but SEC on SEC. And I think, well, there's some good ones this weekend, but I think Alabama and Ole Miss is definitely your number one TV slot in terms of if you've got multiple ones in your bonus room like I do, that's the one that you're going to have the main TV on.
Yeah, that's the main one for sure. Other good games as well, Auburn A&M, a couple others and whatnot. But talking for a while right there, that just got me fired up about this game on Saturday. I'm really, really excited for that one.
Yeah, that offense for Ole Miss, you've been well, you were on the field for it. You weren't a defensive player, but you obviously you saw it. Football. You had friends that played defense against. How hard is that to stop? Just because of the speed and maybe what are some things that the fans don't think about when you're on the other side facing that kind of an offensive system?
That's a great question, Chris. I think, let's talk as an offense as a whole. When you're facing a really high powered offense as an opposing offense, so you're not on the field playing the other team's offense, but you're still playing, you can still impact, their ability to score the ball. The biggest thing is time of possession, specifically when you're playing Tennessee. Tennessee can score in a blink of an eye. If you can hold the ball, I'm not saying you got to stall, but you look up the time of possession, you're double, 2.5 times what they had, you give yourself the best chance to win. The longer it is out of their hands, the better chance you have to win. When it comes to Ole Miss specifically, and I think this is because Kiffin and what he's done in the past, he's had an unbelievable – I don't want to call him this quarterback whisperer. I think that's a little bit overused. But when him and his quarterback are in sync, those offenses are so dangerous. We saw what he did with Matt Corral and how – and it was kind of a little bit of the same thing. Matt Corral's first year at Ole Miss was not great. He was fine. He was a good quarterback, but he wasn't what his legacy was after his last year. In total sync. Is this what's going to happen this year between Kiffin and Dart? Dart's playing a lot better than he did last year. But Kiffin's ability to – basically mold and mesh his own mind into his quarterbacks who's on the field making plays. That's how the explosives happen. And then they got guys all over the field. They got Judkins. They got elite receivers. For us, it was Jonathan Mingo, had like 220 yards on us. Was an elite player, got drafted in the NFL for the Carolina Panthers. And so, Kiffin's ability to, like I said, mesh his mind into his quarterback's mind and somehow have a little bit of a coach on the field while also having, elite backs with Judkins, elite receivers with Mingo last year and the guys they got now, it makes for a really, really intimidating opponent because you don't know, when's the next time you're going to go out there on offense as your own team and have the chance to score. And you're never out of the game. Defenses always give you a chance to win every game, but offense, no matter how far you're down, always gives you a chance to come back in the game, if that makes sense, and especially with Kiffin.
All right, I want to flip to A&M Auburn in a minute. A little injury news maybe this morning that we'll get to. But before we do that, we've got sponsors. That's how we make this show work, and one of those is CHOMPS. You saw my empty package of CHOMPS yesterday. I now got a couple of new boxes of snacks I look forward to trying. They got all kinds of different flavors. Tried the venison last night. It was really good. And one thing that you'll notice when you look on the wrapper, not this huge ingredients list. It's natural stuff. They don't fill it up with a lot of other things and with sugar. There are 9 flavors. So the first thing you want to do if you're trying CHOMPS for the first time, get the trial pack. That's got 6 different flavors. That's what I'm in the middle of trying. So I'll be getting through all those soon. It is perfect for a quick halftime snack during your favorite game. It's great for me. My kids love it. They eat it. 9 to 10 grams of protein per stick. 60 to 100 calories. Again, no sugar, gluten-free, and it's free of the top 9 allergens. So if you're looking for snacks for your kids and you've got allergy issues or whatever, gluten issues, CHOMPS is a really good solution because it steers away from all that stuff and gives you something that you like. We got the Chomplings pack. I think we'd emptied that out within 24 hours as a family. So that tells you a lot about their quality. We've got a promo code that'll be, I think, in the notes for this. So you can get 15% off to help out those who help our channel and buy you some CHOMPS today. All right, Gavin, That Auburn A&M game this weekend going to be fascinating. Neal talked about with Auburn, we just don't know what we're getting yet. We always, I think, you got to trust Hugh Freeze because of his track record. But the strength of that Auburn team was maybe that secondary. They're getting a little healthier. I think they're getting Donovan Coughlin back. He's been out. A couple other guys. I was looking at Auburn Sports this morning. Jay Tate, my friend, had a pretty good update there on some guys getting back. It is going to be fascinating to see really both sides of that ball, because I want to see if Auburn's defense is as legit as the numbers have been so far against Connor Wegman, who is really got the potential to be a stud quarterback in this league. And then I want to see what Auburn does offensively playing the best opponent. We saw Auburn struggle against a Cal team that struggled last weekend against Idaho. Don't know what that means. We'll find out a little bit more. But A&M's defense at times has been a little shaky. So I think this one is fascinating for a number of reasons.
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating. And I think, you look at this game as a whole, and A&M is vastly, and I mean vastly more talented than Auburn. But as we've seen, for some reason, they can't seem to put it all together and kind of win a bunch of these big games. For Auburn, I think it's really interesting because, Hugh Freeze has this unbelievable ability to tap into his players' emotions and get his boys ready for a game. We've seen it when he was at Ole Miss. We saw it when he was at Liberty. There's no reason to doubt that he can't do that now in Auburn. You talk about Donovan Coughlin. If he's back, that's a huge, huge gain for Auburn's defense. Donovan actually originally started his career with me at Vandy and is not I would say, super fluid, turn your hips, run with anybody in the country type of defensive back. And I'm not calling him Tyrann Mathieu, but he's that kind of player. He does a little bit of everything. He's in the box. He can come down and thump you. He can guard your guy's best player as well. If they can get him back and match him up with some of the better guys on A&M's receiving core, that's going to be a huge, huge boost and probably increase their odds to win this game. For A&M, you said it. Connor Wegman we saw at the end of last year, and now he's really taking the next step. This is a must-win game for him and the company, especially after what happened in Coral Gables against Miami. This is a must-win game. If A&M finds a way not to win this game, that seat's already hot. That thing is going to be on fire after this game. And so, I think, for Jimbo, for Petrino, for Wegman, they've been fine offensively. They got to keep finding that consistent. Defensively, can they find a way to really stump Auburn and win this game? And if they do, if they can find a way to find, their strengths on defense while also being as consistent as they've been on offense, they can win this game by 2+ scores, to be honest with you. If not, it can get dicey. It can get really dicey early.
Do you think that, obviously so much rides on a fast offense and the way they play and everything, but they're going to be playing in a place that'll be plenty loud.
Yep.
How much does that affect an offense like Auburn's in terms of just getting plays in and everything, the crowd noise? How much of a factor do you think that is?
Ginormous. It's absolutely ginormous. And if you don't believe me, let's look at last week. Let's look at Tennessee in the Swamp. Tennessee's offense for the past 14 months, going into last year at the beginning of this year, maybe not against Austin Peay, but those guys run their offense as efficiently as anybody in the entire country. You go into the Swamp, 80,000 sold out at night, and they look totally out of sync after their first drive. It has a huge effect on you. It's the noise, it's the chaos, it's the fog of war. People talk about the fog of war, and things get real. It's easy when you're in fall camp and you're going against your own guys. You don't have, crowd noise going on, or you're at home and the home crowd keeps it quiet on offense. That home field advantage, it's funny because growing up, I thought it was more like a superstitious thing. Is home field advantage. Home field advantage is very, very, very real, and I want to make that clear. It's not just a superstitious or I wish we had them at home or whatever thing. If you're a home team in the SEC, your chances of winning that game increase a lot more than if you're on the road. It's just the reality of it. And so, yeah, can Auburn handle it? Not only are they heading into a hostile environment, but it's a new quarterback coach. There's a lot of factors going against Auburn here. Heading into College Station. How well can they tame that? We got to find that out early. I'm talking like the first 2 drives. They got to figure that out.
All right. Want to get into some of the comments and questions we've had here in the chat. Before we do that, another shout to our other sponsor, that is Andy Ludicky and MyPerfectFranchise.net. What Andy does is he spends time with you, sits down, gets to know your aptitudes, your skills, and maybe more importantly, your goals. Are you spending time with families? Are you taking kids to ball games like I'm doing a lot? Andy wants to know those things because it's important to match the lifestyle that you want with the kind of franchises that they deal with. And they deal with a ton of them. They are not in this to place you with company A rather than company B because they get a bigger commission. They are not in this to sit down and stick you with a consulting fee. They don't do that. They sit down and talk with you for free. They match you in good conscience with a company that works. Or franchises that work, actually. So you can make decisions about the kind of lifestyle you want and make sure that the franchise that you're matched with is one that suits your needs. Go to myperfectfranchise.net. I tell Andy that you heard about him here at Southeastern 14 and help yourself to find that next and better career path. Okay, let's go through some stuff that came up in the chat. Let's see. Ole Miss will beat Alabama again this year from our buddy Chris Cobb, Aggie fan with us every day. Ole Miss will win by double digits. And then here's the one. This has been the narrative for a couple of weeks now. Gavin, want to get your thoughts. Is the dynasty over for Alabama?
I'll let you know after this weekend. That's how monumental this game is. That's how if they lose back-to-back games at home, it's over. The dynasties, if they lose back-to-back games at home, Alabama, and they've had a hell of a run, and I commend it, and Nick Saban's still the greatest college coach of all time. But everything has a start and everything has an end. If they lose on Saturday, it's over. The golden age of what we've seen the past few years, or I say handful of years from Alabama, is over, and someone else is taking it. I know Georgia's taking that next step. They don't look as quality this year as they've looked in the past. Can LSU and Brian Kelly step it up? They got embarrassed the first week. They look a lot better now. Is there another team in the SEC that can take a step? I see a comment here, Chris, as well, from Andrew Cooper talking about Tennessee. I don't want to count Tennessee out yet either, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think throwing dirt on Tennessee right now is premature.
I agree. And look, they went, like I just said, they went into a super hostile environment at night, the swamp, in a must-win game for Billy and Napier against a desperate Florida team. And they just didn't look good. They didn't look in sync. I wouldn't count them out yet, especially because there's not that juggernaut in the SEC this year that's a guaranteed loss in their schedule. You used to look at Tennessee's schedule before last year I know Tennessee beat Alabama last year. I want to give all the props. But in years past, you look at their schedule, that was an automatic L. And now it's kind of been the same thing with Georgia. But look, for this year, they have a chance to win every single game on the rest of their schedule. They really do. And, Florida's not going to Florida, it was a great win. I don't think that they're going to end up in Atlanta. They're not that quality team yet. If Tennessee can go out there and win, the rest of the games on their schedule, which I think they can, it's not probable or likely, but they have a chance to. They can find themselves there too. I'm not out on the Vols yet. I'm not, and that's saying something coming from a Vandy guy, y'all. Like that, that is hard for me to say. But I don't think they're as good as they were last year, just because I think Hendon Hooker totally carried the team, and should have been in New York. That's a whole nother conversation. But I wouldn't totally count them out yet. I still think they're in the upper echelon of this conference.
Andrew says he doesn't trust Ole Miss on the lines of scrimmage, and I want to hit on that, but I want to hit on the bigger point. I'm not sure how many teams can be trusted on the lines of scrimmage this week. I mean, offensive line play being under expectation seems to be a theme in at least half the SEC schools right now. What's going on there? And do you see anybody in this league that on the lines of scrimmage you're going, yeah, that's national title material right there? I guess LSU could be one. Yeah. I know they struggled in pass pro at times last year, but I'm not seeing your typical dominate the lines of scrimmage out of your Alabamas, your Georgias, some teams like that this year.
Well, what makes the lines of scrimmage so well is depth, right? When you can have second, third guys running there and be maybe not just as good, but I mean, right there with your first guys. And what's different about now, I wonder if this is an effect of 2 years now of the transfer portal. Guys don't want to go and be the second string at Alabama. Guys don't want to go and be the second string, at Georgia. Georgia's still elite on both lines of scrimmage. I apologize. There's a vacuum going on in the background. I hope that's not bothering my audio here. But I wonder if these are some of the effects that we're seeing of the transfer portal, because what makes lines of scrimmage so great is depth. Because over a 12-game season, 15-game season, if you're lucky enough to be, playing at that time at the end of the year, guys get dinged up and you got to roll other guys in there. And guys get tired in the game, especially with offenses running 80 plays a game now. Depth is what makes the lines of scrimmage so good. And I wonder if, the reason we're not seeing these quality defensive lines or offensive lines that we've seen in past is an effect of the transfer portal. Guys don't want to go be a backup. They don't want to be the sixth man. They don't want to be the seventh man. They want to be the first guy, the second guy, or at least a starter. And so I'm interested to see how that changes the formula to win moving forward, and if that's something that we kind of see replicated in years to come.
Sorry, got to hit the unmute. Let's wrap up here. I know you got to be out in just a minute. Does Saban have a target on his back knowing Bama's not playing up to par? Look, there's been a lot of noise down there that, it's time for him to hang it up, which is just unbelievable that's a narrative. I mean, you can't go there yet, but
not at all.
I think, look, if Nick Saban would know as much as anybody. If the game has passed it, I'm not saying that it has, if the game has passed him by, or fill in the blank with whatever the criticism you want. I don't think that, we're going to be sitting here 5 years from now and, they'll pry the job out of Nick Saban's cold dead hands after a 6-6 year. I think it'll either get turned around, or if Nick Saban doesn't think he's the guy for the job, he'll step aside, and maybe he's frustrated with the game and the portal and all the stuff that's changed. But I don't know, Nick, come on, Nick Saban is deserved better than this.
Let's not jump there yet. And I know you're not, but I think the narrative out there that people are saying that is just blasphemous. Although I will say this is, the least talented Alabama team I've seen in a long time. Therefore, this team needs Alabama this Alabama team needs Nick Saban to be at his best more than ever. Saban needs to coach his tail off this year, and he will. He's done it in the past. But because the players are not as quality, the coach needs to be even better, and especially if they're going to rise up to those expectations that they know they are. Just speaking on this game right here as we wrap up, if I'm an Alabama fan, I don't want to say a player because I don't want to jump to conclusion on their feeling, but I don't know how you cannot be a little anxious and a little nervous for this game this weekend, because you haven't looked great really at all. Ole Miss is rolling, feeling really good about themselves. And then, of course, I think Lane Kiffin just makes everybody in Tuscaloosa nervous anyway with what he's got. And so, I'm really interested to see what the first quarter looks like, because I know those first quarter jitters, especially in a big game, CBS with a lot riding on the line. Kiffin knows it, man. If we're talking about it, Chris, if we're talking about this being the end of the dynasty, and you're telling me that Lane Kiffin has a chance to end it, he knows it, man. He's probably got it plastered on his mirror every morning. I'm really interested to see how this game starts, because that's how the tone is set really early.
Yeah.
And after that, you're just playing ball. But those first quarter jitters, first two drive jitters are very real.
All right, last one. I'll let you answer this. Jason Humphreys wants to know, do you think Lane's statement that time of possession is not important anymore is true? I tend to agree with Jason, but it's plays. It's how many more snaps do you get off, that kind of thing. I mean, you can the offenses go so fast. I mean, time of possession and number of plays used to probably be synonymous, whereas they're not anymore. But I think in my sense, I don't know, that's what he meant. That seems right to me.
Yeah, I think I'll try to rush through this real quick, but if you're playing a fast offense, you want if you're playing against a faster offense as your offense, you want to have as many plays. You're not really worried about the time. if you're playing a slower offense, man, that is so true, especially with the new rules in the first down, which is, a story for another day. That clock can tick, 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 tick. If teams that run the ball monotonously, I mean, you look up and it's 2 minutes left in the first quarter, and you're like, man, we just kicked off 5 minutes ago. And so I'm not sure if it's much more. I agree with you, Chris, if it's about time of possession, but how many plays you get off is important, because your success rate is not going to be, 80%, 70%. It's going to be 40, 30%. And on those big ones, can you truly get it over the top and get these chunk plays for touchdowns? That's what this game is now. This game is about big plays, explosive plays. We call explosive plays are 12 runs of 12 yards or more, or passes of 15 or more. That's an explosive play in every single person's meeting room across the country. That's just a basic definition. And so that's what college football is now. It's not about monotonously driving down the field of what it used to be back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, whatever it is. Now it's about explosive plays. Explosive plays and turnover are the biggest two stats to lead to winning.
All right, we're out of time for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Do this live every day from 11 to noon. Gavin joins me good bit of the time, not all the time. We'll have Trey Wallace from Outkick on Friday. Hadn't set an agenda for Thursday yet. We'll probably gauge the news overnight and see what's there. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. That helps our analytics. For Gavin Schoenwald, I'm Chris Lee. This is the SEC Daily on Southeastern 14. We'll see you again on Thursday from 11 to noon Central.